Blah, 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 blah. Silly computers.
Be better if you're running next.
You know, Michael, you're always welcome to give a talk.
I've had before. They're awesome sometimes.
How does Zoom come?
That is, honest to God, probably the better question that we have to ask ourselves.
Oh, that's super easy. It's just that'll be his talk in 5 minutes.
Okay, so tonight's talk, Sarah, the self-actuated residential automated habitat. First off, does anyone actually get the joke?
There's a few jokes it could be, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Has anyone seen the TV show?
Rico.
Okay,
Yeah.
Brandon got it. Has anyone else seen Eureka?
Yes,
If you have clothes.
I am disappointed in everyone right now.
especially me.
Very much anonymous
Wait, is
speaker.
that the one where they
Chairman, the sheriff was the non-technical person.
Yes, Sheriff Jack Carter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you cross the bridge and it's like a parallel.
Yeah, I know. It's like the ultimate smart home fantasy for us.
Yes.
I'm disappointed in like everyone right now.
So
We need to be better nerds and geeks.
I love that Ben didn't look at this up at all, so he didn't know if this was a thing or not.
I asked ChatGPT to go on and like proof my LinkedIn post about it, and it said, "What the hell is Sarah?" And I said, "It's a reference to Eureka," and it was like, "Oh, that's smart."
Does everyone get killed by it later on in the series?
It sure as hell tries. So there's that. Anyways, thanks for coming out to Sarah, aka with Home Assistant here. For me, I think I fiddle around with Home Assistant about like an hour a day at this point. A little bit about me. This is also a plug. I'm currently seeking my next opportunity. So if you'd like to hire me, here's my information. I love my cats. I have paid the cat tax for everyone. This is Mr. Snoopy over here. He has decided to steal a sock for some reason, and that is Madame Trudeau. She is a seatbelt girl. I don't know why. She didn't have to go to the vet. Her brother did. Instead, she wanted to. I love to bake, love to cook, and I'm passionate all about tech here. And like I said, I paid the cat tax. Why Home Assistant? So first off, we have our open source nature. So with everyone in this room, I know how much we all care about. Okay, I'm just gonna come in and I hate how this one works. I'm just gonna go make a PR and fix it. We all have that ability to do it right now. We can customize the absolute crap out of it. I know you, for example, you're gonna go in and do that, and then you're just gonna rip it out and put smart things in. That's a later talk this year. No, I'm kidding. There's an absolutely massive community behind this, but one of the most interesting things is GitHub did, I forget which report it was last year, but the Home Assistant core repo is the second most active open source project on GitHub of 2023. So this is not a project that's going away. It's sticking around and it's going to be here for a long time. And Home Assistant just turned 10 years old this or last year, I believe. And the kind of funny thing is, the first commit from the founder, Paulus, the commit was, how could he automate his Philips Hue lights based upon a device tracker on his phone whenever he was away from the house? Like, oh, come home, my lights turn on, leave my house and my lights turn off. That was all Home Assistant was designed to do. Second one is our privacy and security. We have absolute local control and we own our own data. Nothing's pumped up to the cloud. You can completely air gap out Home Assistant, or you can completely connect it like I've done because I'm insane for some reason at the end of the day. Compatibility, it works with everything. There's over 2,000 official active integrations there, and those are ranging from local integrations. For example, I've got a weather station at my house that pushes data up and it never leaves my internal network. Then I've got Tuya devices that require cloud to set up, but then work locally, and that's through some other integrations. And then there's Aurora sensor, so Home Assistant could have notified you when you could have seen the northern lights above your house from there. More specifically, there's four different types of polling mechanisms, or sorry, data aggregate mechanisms that Home Assistant has. We can pull directly from the cloud can push data to us, we can pull locally, or we can get a local push. Flexibility, kind of covered a little bit of this, but the insane customization that we have in our automation capabilities. And we'll get into the event-driven architecture of Home Assistant later on. But more specifically, everything's written in YAML. We can add in our comments. Granted, we can't view our comments from the GUI, unfortunately. But we can come in, we have our triggers, whether or not we're going to trigger on state or actual device action, or we can break out into more advanced functions such as node red. I personally haven't really broken out into node red myself, but it does offer a lot more automation.
What's the right?
It is a IoT connector, so you can just, I'm the complete wrong person to answer it, but it is specifically made for IoT devices, and it's a very graphical user interface. Did you ever use Stringify?
Nope, I'm old school and bored.
I mean, we already knew that one.
Yes.
It's like a visual flow
Yeah.
editor. So instead of having to run all the code, you can basically make chunks and then just drag lines between them.
Okay.
Lego blocks for JavaScript.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a really good way of putting it,
Like,
actually.
low code scripting flow maker thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But incredibly powerful. I myself need to get into it. There's one, I have a bedtime automation routine that I need to rewrite in Node Red because I've just gone beyond what Home Assistant can do reasonably. Cost effectiveness, it's free. My biggest expense for Home Assistant is the ungodly amount of batteries I go through and power for the Raspberry Pi, but thank God we have TVA. No vendor lock-in. I mean, this comes back to the open source. This has been one of the few projects where there hasn't been a developer that just outright comes out and says, I hate your project, I'm going to fork it, and you end up with like 3 different variations of the same project. It's like, which one do I use? Home Assistant purple or Home Assistant blue? No, it's just Home Assistant. Thank God. And I'll try and speed through the rest of these, but frequent updates. I'm legitimately updating my Home Assistant server probably 7 times a month. There's that many updates. And so one thing that we all see working in IT is that god awful, what version of Python do I have to run? I remember in my last job is I had to run PyEnv. I think I had like 5 versions of Python on my laptop just to do my daily job. Home Assistant runs one minor version of Python, and when the next one comes out, you have 2 release cycles, so 2 months for everything in the Home Assistant ecosystem to come up to date. And after that, it's deprecated. It does not work. So it really encourages everyone to like get on their game. Lots of automated dependency tracking with like Dependabot and Renovate and everything else. A user-friendly interface, we'll cover that one later, but an insane amount of dashboards with it. We can build it out, and I think it's next year, the Home Assistant specifically, they did an interview with one YouTuber, Smart Home Solver, and they were talking about dashboards and how to kind of more open source the dashboards, because you'll see on Reddit, check out my super awesome dashboard, and you have so many developers and software engineers that come out. It's like, look at all this custom CSS and all these custom cards I put in the dashboards. They're ungodly beautiful. And I have one that I straight up stole from Reddit. It's amazing. But it's insanely customizable and flexible there. And on our advanced features, and more specifically, I just completely jacked up those speaker notes. On our advanced features, one thing that's going to be coming out in this release, and it should actually come out tomorrow, is they're going to introduce local LLMs. So I know we've had a couple AI talks. Worldwide Technology gave one for us, but in Home Assistant, last year was the year of the voice. So we all have like a Google Assistant or like an Alexa in our house or something. And we'll get into it later, where you can use like ESP32 chips and I think ESP8266 or something, and you can create local voice nodes, and you can run local LLMs and just have your own truly local voice assistant at your house. And I know that's something you're going to want to do. And it's in the RC for this release right now, so hopefully it makes it in.
I already have my audio hats and other devices ready.
I saw, I'll have to show it later. I won't spoil it. But, local and remote access. I myself, I pay the like 65, 70 bucks a year for Nabu Casa. I do it to support the developers. It supports the commercial arm, which pays the developers for the open source arm of it. Nabu Casa is there. There's a couple, the way it's set up under Swiss law, because our Swiss company is very interesting. We're not going to get into that, but I pay to support it. They have all the instructions for if you don't want to pay it, how to access it. You can just WireGuard in and access it, but if you pay for it, you also get like native Alexa and native Google Assistant integration and energy management. We'll just cover a lot of that more later. Installation methods, there's so many different ways. If you came from this talk and you said, I want to go set up Home Assistant, the best way I could tell you is normally I'd say, go get yourself Home Assistant Yellow, but you can't find the freaking hardware. Just don't do it. Go get yourself like a Raspberry Pi, an Odroid, or just some sort of generic hardware, and you can just straight up install it on there, bare bones. And the reason I suggest this one is you're going to have radios unless everything you're doing is just like a Wi-Fi connection. You can pass them through in Docker, but I myself, I'm not going to do that. Ironically, the supervised instance actually is running Docker under the hood, but it passes it through just perfectly. You can also run it on your own container. The only thing you're lacking is what they call the Home Assistant add-on store. Sorry, I see we have a couple chats. I'll get to those later. The add-on store, there's a couple of things. So for example, you can run like a VS Code Studio server, edit in your configuration.yaml. Otherwise, you're going to have to find another method to do it. You can do a manual supervised install, or you can run a core install. Don't do the core install. You're going to be screwing around with Python all day long. And basically, I would equate doing a normal core install is if you're just going to manually install a Unify controller nowadays. Yes.
Unify controller?
Unify access points.
Okay, hey, it's always good to ask questions.
No, I mean, it's fair.
I have a question.
Yes.
I got all that looks at around home. Did I handle this?
Do what?
You got a what?
In that book.
Until I have that consider home, did I handle this?
So the question was kind of like an old item netbook handle it. I actually have a buddy in Brazil. He has it on some janky ass laptop and it's running everything. And I think he's running like Proxmox on it in a containerized environment. So the answer is yes.
So you make
Surprise. So this is totally a squirrel, but I learned so many interesting things about Brazil. And one of the more interesting things is they basically have people that come up to the States all the time to buy all of their like electronics and they just bring them back completely legal. And it is still cheaper to like do that than it is to buy it with taxes in Brazil. And also their shower heads will completely electrocute the crap out of you.
So to add on to that question for your netbook, yes, it will get you started and it will get you very far, but eventually you will upgrade to something else.
Yes. And to extend upon that too, I started out with like a 2 gig Raspberry Pi and I about threw it out the freaking window once I started playing with ESP Home, because unless you proxy Home Assistant for HTTPS, ESP Home has to compile on there unless you just hack it up, and you will hate your life because it's just going to fail out. You need 4 gigs of RAM to be able to compile ESP Home. Is that probably?
I have found that the HP Elite Desk, the little desktop minis with like an i5 and about 4 gig of RAM are ideal because it gives you enough USB ports to plug in things to do like Z-Wave radio controllers to control Z-Wave devices and all the other do Matter and
Yeah.
those type of devices. So it's really good, and you can find them used on eBay all day long for around 50 to 60 bucks. So
if you go check out servethehome.com, check out their thin mini micro section.
yep.
Yeah.
I ran an ancient Intel notebook with an old seller on it, and it runs just fine.
There you go.
It is not that much. Yes, Aaron.
I was gonna say, I've also had success with running it on a lot of random weird stuff. So far, I've had success on a Pi 3, an upboard, a repurposed Dell thin client, and right now it's running on a Dell Precision. I forget, but it's one of those 1 liter PCs that there's some over there out frame you can't see.
Yeah, I also saw you were saying something about regulars with life safety stuff. What was that comment in regards to?
That's in regards to the previous comment. So for devices that take AAAs and AA's, the
Mm,
Panasonic Eneloops have about half the capacity of a traditional, disposable cell, but unlike a lot of other rechargeables, they have very low self-discharge. So I use them for air quality sensors and for the thermostat backup batteries and a bunch of other devices that don't really need a lot of battery.
Mhm.
It can't help with the things that take the coin cells, but those don't tend to go bad very quickly. But for life safety stuff like fire alarms, I still use alkaline cells.
That actually, I didn't include that, but that's a really good point, Aaron. In the entire smart home ecosystem, they heavily discourage rechargeable batteries. I've tried to use rechargeable batteries and I end up just kicking myself every freaking month because they just go bad instantly. And it's like, I know they're good, but they just go
Yeah.
bad.
Most of them have moderate self-discharge, so
Mm,
it'll have maybe a shelf life of a few weeks at best. Whereas like the mark for the Eneloops is they actually come factory charged and they usually have most of that charge after having gone through the entire logistics pipeline.
yeah. So going on. So why do I personally love this? Home Assistant is an event-driven architecture, pub sub mod. I can do whatever the hell I want to. And so everyone in here knows what event-driven is. I hope. So our built-in events, state change, automation triggered, script started, service registered, and Home Assistant started or stopped. Surprisingly, Home Assistant started and stopped has become a lot more useful as I have progressed in my automation journey. Because every time I reboot Home Assistant, it's like, your windows have closed. I'm like, screw you. No, they haven't. They've been closed. And it's so frustrating. But states and services all exist on top of Home Assistant from that point. Every event that happens is all stored in what they effectively call the recorder database, which is a SQLite database, if I remember right.
Mhm.
And the downside to this is, and I have not learned my lesson yet, and I suspect I will very soon. One, I changed, or the default recorder retention period is 10 days. And keep in mind, Home Assistant is chatty. You could outsource this to a database on your network, but the ideal scenario is you don't use the micro SD card. One, you should use class 10 at minimum for starting out, but you actually get like a USB to SSD adapter. I have not learned my lesson yet and it has not crashed. So maybe that will be tonight. Have you?
I went through about 4 or 5 cards before I went the SSD route.
Yeah. So we'll see when I learn my lesson.
I got away with an eMMC that has wear leveling for since 2016 until last month
Oh my gosh.
and didn't see any significant degradation. I actually pulled it off that machine just because there wasn't enough space and memory on it.
Now I'm more curious, but I
had a fanless home network at the apartment before I moved. And so I had a lot of low end things that were like, a board with, 4 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of disk, and an Atom on it. And that was most of my home automation at the apartment.
Okay. So going back to why else do I personally love this one? The release schedule. I was talking about updates. First Wednesday of every month is that month's major release. And then after that, it's generally about every Friday, which is a little odd, but that's what May's release schedule was. They release their patches. And that's primarily dependency updates at that point. And the only time this has ever broken for me was sometime in the last like 6 months. The maintainer of the Roomba Pi integration, because keep in mind it's all built on Python, did a horrible dependency update, and it was like, okay, you can downgrade, manually install this package, or wait another week or two before it was updated. But other than that, it's working out perfect for there. And the integrations and local support, this is actually a little bit interesting, but this is why I first came to Home Assistant. So I was a diehard SmartThings fan, and on my Reddit, I wrote this old post about smart home architecture, and I was horrifically wrong, and not afraid to admit that. I was like, okay, we should have our control plane layer, our automation layer, and then our voice layer. And in it, I had tons of cloud connections there. And my favorite cloud connection was this little device called a smart drive. Has anyone heard of it by chance? So it was this really just fancy chip that could handle super high heat and incredible humidity. And it was a magnet you threw inside your drive, and it communicated up to their AWS servers there, and it said, your dryer is done. That was awesome because it was more accurate than the actual sensor in my dryer. And I got bit because they said, oh, we never designed it with a local API and we're shutting down tomorrow. Really sucks to be you on your $70 piece of paperweight now. It's like, dang it. So I found out about this, and I can distribute the slides and stuff later. But I found this, keeping your smart drive sensor operational. We can scroll through it in here, but this is how I found out about ESP Home. And the entire community, and this is all in the official Home Assistant stuff, but they actually contacted the manufacturer and said, hey, so turns out this little device is using Bluetooth Low Energy. Can you please tell us how to decode it? And thankfully, they were like, yeah, we're shutting down. We don't really care. We'll tell you how to decode it. So they did. And all you need to do is they actually used an ESP32 board themselves, just a different form factor. It was just like, yeah, it's broadcasting Bluetooth Low Energy, pick it right on up. And this right here is literally the code. So more specifically, this is the code that goes in ESP Home. And then these are some predefined sensors inside of Home Assistant. And this is, for the most part, all the code that you've had to add to make your $70 paperweight actually work again. And it was incredible. I was just like, this is the best thing ever. Let me find back where I'm supposed to be. There we go. So, but the point I'm getting at here is there's a constant reverse engineering. I know from talking with Michael, correct? We were talking last month, and he was telling me about how he goes in and all of his, like, I'm just going to call them his cheap Chinese devices. He doesn't want the actual circuitry in them, and he's replacing them with ESP32 boards. And you can do that. There's so much information. But there's also someone reverse engineered the Roborock API. Roborock is a Chinese company. They don't want to play nice with Home Assistant. Someone said, screw you, I'm just going to do it myself. And Roborock has not shut them down. Hire, they're the company that owns GE nowadays. But the European arm of them, they sent a cease and desist to the guy that was maintaining the Home Assistant hacks add-on. It's like, oh, you're hurting our API. The entire community backed up, supported them, and the legal department there was like, oh crap, we didn't realize that they actually cared about this crappy little integration, and we were just going to threaten them, and now they're like, we'll work with you on this. So there's a lot of community support behind this. So how to get started? So I was talking about actual hardware earlier, and wow, this would have been so much better if I actually put in more information on this slide. So yeah, I know, great. So let's say you're currently using SmartThings, Habitat, you've got an Akara. So you just went out and bought that fancy Akara M3 hub. By the way, that hub really sucks. Don't buy it. All the YouTube reviews are terrible. But you have one of these hubs. What I actually also started out with is like, okay, I'm going to do Home Assistant. I just integrate it in. It's a cloud connection. It'll work just fine. until Comcast went out like 5 times and then it didn't work. I'm like, okay, screw this. I'm just gonna start migrating. We'll talk about that in a second. But with some of these hubs, like the Akara hubs, they actually support pure local connections. The Smart Things hub, it is a cloud-to-cloud connection. Habitat there's a HAX integration, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you can also start from scratch, which is what everyone will eventually do at the end of the day. And with that, you have to go in and start getting some hardware. So before we go out and buy all of our hardware, we need to talk about our smart home protocols. Do any of these protocols look familiar to anyone? Okay, so we've got a couple different ones. Zigbee, so cheap, so easy. I love it, but oh my gosh, is it so bad? So the best way I can describe it is it's loose standards. It shares the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. So your microwave, your Wi-Fi, it's all going to screw with it. You can go on, you can get so many cheap devices. Like if you buy them from AliExpress, $5 a sensor. Same sensor on Amazon, 20 bucks. Like the car sensors are amazing for this. But I learned a personal lesson here. Remember when I just said loose standards? Just because it is Zigbee does not mean it works. Turns out in my case, I need to either go buy an Akara hub or I needed to make an entirely separate Zigbee network. I have 3 at my house because I hate myself. And one of my Zigbee networks, I had to specifically engineer to work with Akara devices because my existing Zigbee network said, oh, they connect and every like 48 hours, they're like, screw you, I'm just going to drop off. So there's that. So yeah, very loose standards. But we'll talk about Zigbee to MQTT later, which really helps out here. Z-Wave. It's all done by the Z-Wave Alliance, or as I like to call it, it's pay to play at the end of the day. But there's a reason for this. You go in, you pull up any of the documentation for these, all of the manuals read the exact same. They tell you how to set them. Now, as a newcomer, it looks super duper complicated, but it's all documented. More specifically too, it all runs on a separate frequency, 908.42 megahertz here. It's not going to interfere with anything in your house. That is actually the American frequency. European and Australia is different.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's various levels. There's unencrypted, or thanks for that, Brandon. There's unencrypted Z-Wave. There's S1 and S2. Please don't ask me the difference. And on S2, there's unauthenticated and like authenticated. And Zeus by the Smartest Home makes probably a lot of the best sensors out there. Like a motion sensor from them, though, is like $40. And we live in a very privileged society here in the US, and we can actually get Z-Wave sensors outside of the US. Like kind of Western Europe is really the only place you're really going to find Z-Wave. You're not going to find this in Latin America or really anywhere else in the world. Maybe a little bit in Australia. That's it. It's very expensive, but it is the most reliable. And going back on this, Zigbee,
It's also a mesh network.
it's getting to that. Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I appreciate that. Zigbee will mesh to hardwired devices. So when you actually build out these networks, so if you do like an all Zigbee network, you better put in a like Zigbee light switch or Zigbee hardwire repeater everywhere before you dare connect a single Zigbee battery device. Z-Wave devices, you can go into Home Assistant on a Z-Wave JS UI and say, oh, how about you just go rebuild your network? Take a couple hours, you might have to reboot Home Assistant, but it just figures it out. And then you can just go, oh, look at my new pretty network. It's so nice. Zigbee is just an absolute disaster on that. Aaron's saying it's a mesh network with up to 4 hops there. And yeah, normally only power devices act as repeaters. Oh, I didn't know about the overnight hill cycle. One kind of interesting thing on the normally only power devices are repeaters. Zeus makes their, I think it's called the ZSE 40 motion sensor. And it's really stupid because you can configure it, and when you configure it, if you plug it into power, and it will like, oh, I'll be a Z-Wave repeater. And then you can unplug it and it'll just obliterate your battery because it's repeating, it's being a repeater all day long. And they're like, please go factory reset. But one thing to note too, so Zigbee devices, you come in, you pair them, they pair up. Z-Wave devices with S2, they came out with something called Smart Start. So you can come in, you can scan a little QR code, and like say you're a home builder, you go in and your client comes in, scans all these devices, or you're a professional smart home installer. They scan them up, and then the house power comes up. Every device just automatically connects, pre-named and everything. It's absolutely beautiful. Wi-Fi devices, I consider this like back in 2015 when LifeX came out. It's like, oh, check out our smart bulbs and stuff like that. They have their APIs, they generally integrate, but there's not any standards. I'll come back to Matter. I was talking about Bluetooth, specifically BLE. There's a lot of there's kind of a couple devices for them. There's a company called SwitchBot. They're the main vendor that uses BLE. I use a SwitchBot Tilt to control some Venetian style blinds in my house. They also have a smart lock that is Bluetooth controlled now. And then they've also got like a curtain motor, but Bluetooth is not very prevalent unless you're buying these Mia Flora / Xiaomi Bluetooth plant monitors. So if you're into like gardening in your house and you want to know when to water your plants, Home Assistant is great, by the way. It is the best thing. Matter, the latest and greatest, pretty girl on the block for Home Assistant here. Everyone says it's great. I'm torn on it. There's Matter over Wi-Fi, Matter over Thread, particularly with Matter over Wi-Fi. Most of the time you need the vendor app to configure it, and then you'll get a Matter share code. And so basically the device will pair to one smart home, so like Google Assistant or Alexa, and then it can share it to other smart home ecosystems. And from there, they all receive the state. But unlike a better integration like Z-Wave, Zigbee, or honestly even just direct Wi-Fi a lot of times, with Matter, you're only getting, mainly with Matter over Wi-Fi, you're only getting on, off, and like dimming capabilities on lights and light color. If there's like RGB IC lights for individually addressable there, you cannot do that. Like on Nanoleafs or Govi's new products, I have a Govi lamp that has Matter. That has 2 lights in it. Home Assistant sees it as one. I cannot control it otherwise. And then Matter over Thread. Thread's a completely new wireless standard there. Very few devices support it. I'm personally annoyed at this because I bought the ultimate Zigbee / Thread chip. It was multi-protocol firmware. It has been a complete disaster. It's the Sky Connect chip. Do not buy it. It was not worth it. There are a couple of other chips there, but that's about it. Hacks, I had briefly mentioned this earlier. Home Assistant Community Store. This is just where you're going to go and get everything else at this point. So we'll come in and say like, just on my Home Assistant server here. There is, bye Barry.
Bio.
I'm just briefly showing real quick here, but there is absolutely tons of different things. For one, if you have Eufy RoboVacs, this is not an official Home Assistant integration. Everything here is third party. The spam panel, if you have like, if you're building a really new house, spam panels are really awesome if you're into that there. But extra integrations. But coming back on here, any questions right now? I know I'm kind of blowing through this fast. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about there. So coming back here, we have our back end or our front end and our actual integrations. Particularly on our front end, Home Assistant, this entire interface is called quote unquote Lovelace is what they're using it there for. And everything on here is to add in additional elements. So for example, weather chart card. I'm actually curious. Yeah, bringing different things in, but this weather radar card, for example, I can show off on my weather dashboard here. And this right here is all of what that card is doing, or like this wind direction cardinality. And this is actually 20 feet from my house in my backyard over the past 48 hours, but coming in from a custom card. And then back here on our actual integrations, what I was showing is there's just tons of different things. But some of the more interesting ones is, for me, I have waste management for my trash service. They're really annoying and they moved my trash day. And now it's Monday, which is, I don't know if anyone realizes, but Monday is when every holiday is. So my trash day always gets moved. So just like really stupid stuff. But now it tells me when my trash day is. Just really stupid stuff like this that I love. And that all comes through Hacks integrations there. Just a couple really one that I really wanted, two that I want to notate. One is called battery notes. And so battery management on wireless sensors is so annoying. Most people I talk to, they say, oh, I wait till it dies. And it's like, now my house is freaking breaking, or I have like a graph or something like that, and I wait till the sensor gets low. Battery notes combined with some templating, which we'll get into, and a couple of other things, you can really automate your battery management at this point, and your smart home will let you know when your sensors and stuff are actively dying. And another one, local to you, not to you local, but no, wait, sorry. No, it is to you local. There's two different ones. Let me validate this. I'm sorry. Nope, apparently it is called local Tuya. So this one right here, Tuya is kind of like Smart Things for China. So every device there, it will use the Tuya app, and in the US, it's called the Smart Laugh app. And we can buy all these devices. You come in, you configure it, and you can go and register for a Tuya developer key. It'll eventually expire. You have to come back and refresh it, but you can control it locally through local Tuya. And this is what I was talking about with Michael, where he's replaced these devices with an ESP32 board slash chip inside of them. But you can control them locally. You can actually block them off from the internet, and then they'll never get firmware updates at that point either. It's really cool because you can get cheaper devices. I have a cat feeder, and I can just press a button inside Home Assistant, and I don't have to go through their app, and it's great. Aaron, I use the EcoWit Boy, and a lot. I do not like them. Noteworthy mention, this is freaking awesome here, and I just want to highlight, come back here. So very still the Ukraine war is going on here, but just to show like how Home Assistant can do other cool things here. This polls one of the Ukraine war APIs every 10 seconds because the Ukrainian government actually posts this information. So I wish it was honestly used more, but assuming you have internet in Ukraine, you can actually poll this right here, set up notifications, figure out, are you actively under like an airstrike? And in the middle of the night, alert yourself. You can go in, you can do like a Google Voice alert, you can send a broadcast message, you can play an air horn in your house, you can trigger a local Z-Wave siren, you can make this as local as humanly possible. And I mean, if you have internet on your phone, you probably have internet at your house. There was also another really great example here where this guy made an entire dashboard here. And in it, and we're not going to go through the whole thing here, but it was just like, hey, does he have any family in Kiev there? And then run like a script and speak if his house is even in do not disturb mode. And then scrape monitoring channels, and those channels are, I didn't even know you could do this with Home Assistant, but he's scraping a Telegram public channel for, is there an imminent danger? And of course, this is all in Ukrainian, which you can't read here, but more specifically, that is the word they're searching for there. And I was just thinking, this is awesome. I didn't know you could even do this. And on a less important note, at least for me here, I found one on Reddit and some guy made a broadcast weather. So now my house, even when my house is in do not disturb, if there's a tornado warning, all my Google homes, they're just going to turn their volume up and I'm just going to blare that EAS alarm and it's going to wake my ass up in the middle of the night, which I find to be important because, I mean, we all saw what August of last year, we actually did have tornadoes. And during the middle of the day, my house will blare if there's a severe thunderstorm or tornado watch in the area. So you can do a lot more cool stuff here rather than just saying, oh, I'm just going to turn my lights on. And you can actually like protect yourself with a home assistant, which is incredible to me. So come in here. I hate Google or Alexa. How do we do this? So like I was saying, 2023 was the year of the voice. And we'll get to that in a second. But say you have an Android phone and you yell at Google, I'm not going to trigger everyone's phone right now, but that'd be really fun to do. You can go in and you can replace your default Google Assistant with actual Home Assistant. Should you? Not until their LLMs actually come out tomorrow and you actually play around with it, because that'd be really cool. And you can come up with your own, load it in there. And NVIDIA is actually working with Nabicasa, once again, the commercial arm of Home Assistant there. And the way NVIDIA and Nabicasa kind of envision this is NVIDIA's release, or they have their NVIDIA Jetson, which has a lot of neural network chips on board. And they kind of envision homes will now have a local AI computer that you'll be able to go and buy. Home Assistant will be able to use this. So now you have a Home Assistant computer, a NAS computer, and an AI computer all in your house. And you can do everything 100% local, which is amazing here. But so we'll come back in over here. Also, this talk is going to run a little long given our earlier, but so they had multiple chapters here just coming in. I have not played too much with their Year of the Voice. I was playing around with it last night, and just the base one, you can say, hey, Home Assistant, turn on my living room lights. It'll do it. And then when I said, can you change the lights to daylight? It said, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, that's kind of useless. Everyone buys RGB bulbs to impress their friends. I want you to do more than turn the lights on and off. So that's a little frustrating. But more specific, I saw this, and this is freaking cool. So if you have a Google Nest Mini, you can buy this Anju voice chip, and I don't know how much it is. Let's actually go look here or whatever. So let's see. Okay, well, that's going to be annoying. Because I'm just curious at this point. Okay, well, screw them. Let's just say it's expensive and leave it at that. But you can pull out, so you can pull out the actual PCB board from your Google Nest Mini, flash this, which is an ESP32. It'll come right in. You can yell at it inside the Google hardware case. And this is your full local Home Assistant here. Does not touch Google. It's just sitting in a Google hardware. This is the future if you're into it. One thing I will say, and I have not done this in my house yet, but so like I said, I paid for Nabicasa for the Google integration, and it's a cloud-to-cloud connection, but you can actually go in and edit it, and you can make Google Assistant use a directly local connection. So it is not using its cloud-to-cloud, which is really interesting. Need to experiment with it more. And then there are voice pipelines, which
Home Assistant.
so we'll try and distribute these later, but you can actually get in and pipeline your voice commands there. So we'll get into the automation here in a second, but in the default automation, what we have is actually pretty darn advanced. And we'll actually go ahead and show a little bit of that. To say, let's go in and build us the automation. What's an automation someone wants to see?
Feed my cats now
Okay, how do we want to trigger it, Michael?
by pushing a button that says feed my cats now.
Okay, so we can do that.
Helper.
Or when you leave the house.
Okay.
An option to exercise for cats.
You know, Mr. Snoopy's fat as hell, so he kind of needs that. So,
Probably cares about something about cats. Same thing, cat litter, that's.
so persons with guests, I have a custom sensor here that we can use. So we're just gonna say, person home, okay? So we have that. And I stole this from Brandon like over a year ago, but I have a input toggle called dumb house. So if my house is acting really annoying and I just want to shut it down, I yell at Google and say, turn on dumb house. And my house stops doing everything. Light switches do not turn on, they do not turn off. It's just everything. So, yep, except for like my tornado warning or my tornado warning and stuff like this. Safety alerts are not controlled by it. Also, if my house catches fire, my house will literally call the fire department for me if I do not put it out within X amount of time. So just really cool stuff. And I'm going to rename this person home. So I hear laughter in the room.
We're just talking about ours and that's your house, Wesley.
Really?
You know, I have a good insurance plan.
Say you really cost up in a lot.
Wesley, is it not cat home because they in your house?
I mean, it is Mr. Snoopy's mansion. Okay, so I'm using a numeric sensor here because this is going to be easier for the sake of this right here. So I'll show how this one comes out here. But anyways, so when a person is home and dumb house is off, I'm going to choose an action. So let me actually, so there's a couple of different ways. So you can use an if statement, and in the if, choose the trigger by. You don't always use a triggered by statement. I prefer to, because that way, instead of having an automation per thing, I can have one giant automation, and I can have multiple triggers. So like I have a bathroom fan automation, and it can trigger from humidity, or it can trigger from, oh crap, my upstairs AC failed. Please try and exhaust all the heat upstairs from there. But
And for folks that don't like GUIs, you can edit this in YAML too.
well, why would they want to do that? Look at how awful that is. I mean, shit, let's just go to freaking Node-RED.
Gamble and GUI.
I'm sorry, we're Linux admins sometimes and we like it.
Oh, you like pain?
Yes.
Okay,
I occasionally use VI as well.
okay.
That exact conversation, one of the interview questions, isn't it? Do you like pain? How do you feel about VI?
There's a joke someone will have to remind me after this recording is done. So for the sake of this, I'm using a choose block because it is a case statement in programming terms, case/switch block. So in here, I'm going to say if it is triggered by the person home, in our actions, I'm going to run a service call. And because for the life of me, I cannot remember how the hell to call my cat feeder. So please forgive me while I figure this out, because this is one of these really weird ones. You know, my cats are really gonna love everyone right now. Like, just saying. So
Regenerate that key, because we might all be able to feed your cats now.
no, you actually can't. So it's good.
Well, you are putting a routable URL DNS name in your browser.
Take pictures of
Be
it.
quiet, Michael.
It's also recorded.
Shut up. Okay, so what this,
Show us your cookies.
go away. This is split brain DNS, so there's that. Thanks, Aaron. God, there's so many messages. So one thing I do want to illustrate in here. So we have this. Make Snoopy happy. So inside of here, I did what's known as a service call. So for a service call, we could say, I have adaptive lighting. Do we want to do something with the alarm? Do we want to? Denon receivers have their own service calls, which ironically is operated over Telnet. It's really stupid. Do I want to start a fan? Just various things that we can also do, because I do want to cover this. So say if I want to turn on a kitchen light, there's a couple different ways I could do this. So I could say turn on my kitchen lights with the device. And since this is a Z-Wave, we can say, oh my gosh, why is this so freaking complicated? And we eventually say, oh, turn on the kitchen lights. That seems simple enough, right? Or in this case, it'd be better to come in and say we could choose an entity, a device, or an area. We're going to ignore labels, they're tags. It's not worth it for the sake of this conversation here. But I would come down and say, okay, I'm going to choose a device of my kitchen light. Sorry, not that one. This is actually a switch. Switches and lights are two very distinct things. Switch turn on. This is just an add-on here. And also just because we can turn on the air compressor. But I just wanted to highlight the difference here. And I say this, and we'll get back to the CAD automation in a second. But when you come in and say, oh, I swapped out my smart bulb or I swapped out the switch, this right here is really frustrating because you got to come in and update all your automations because it's tied to device ID. This is tied, or we actually do it on the entity. It's tied to the entity ID. You can remap entity IDs within Home Assistant, and you never have to come in and update your automation assuming you made your entity IDs right. So learn from my stupid mistakes because I didn't the first time. Cool. So
Can you just like scan the QR code that comes with your device? Pick up the IDs that you have.
only the Z-Wave devices and Matter have that. It's better just to use entities from the get-go. So there's a lot of things like group your devices in areas, categorize them because they just came out with that, and just kind of stuff like that. So there's a lot of best practices that I'll see if we can cover in here. So, but let's go over here. Yes.
That's something, is there a default time or is that something entirely within Office you create?
It is defaultly assigned, so we can go in here and so backdoor contact battery level. It made it sensor dot backdoor contact battery level.
Typically, it's device name dot what the sensor is, battery level, contact, switch.
The class of device.
Yeah.
So like switch dot sensor dot, stuff like that.
Basic namespacing, is that a good way to say it?
Yeah, this,
Kind of like an OIP word to
yeah. So this right here, my this is my Harmony. Its entity ID is media player dot bedroom. Because I'd have to pull up the exact documentation for it, but everything exists within a namespace. And you can change these through helpers. So like some people say, oh, it comes through as a light. Well, I don't want it as a light. I want it as, or sorry, it comes through as a switch. It's actually a fan. So technically it doesn't matter, but also it does matter once you get into more advanced automations. So now that we have that in here, so we have this automation. Oh, come on. What did we screw up? Why aren't we going to make Snoopy happy?
They say about live demos.
Yeah, they always horrifically fail. I understand, Brandon. Thank you. So let me remake it 1 second.
Especially should the prop for the audience.
Oh, I know why. Because I didn't put that in there. So we're just gonna come in. I'm sorry, I was stupid. And then we come back down. Good questions, though. Triggered by our person's actions, service. DP is part of the whole Tuya nonsense here. And we're gonna come back to our settings so I can grab this out. Feed cats. And we are going to grab our device ID here, 201. And for the sake of this, I'm going to show this. So this is a Jenga template, which is Python templating. And more specifically, so I'm pulling the state of a helper, input number.catFeeder portion. This catFeeder accepts 1 to 20. It's supposed to be each one is each number is 10 grams. It's not true on this one, but it's close enough. And one funky thing about, or two funky things about Home Assistant. The first one not related to this is it does not accept local DNS names. You will beat your head against the wall trying. Do not try and assign your room but a DNS name and put it in Home Assistant. The second one is everything is automatically typecasted to a string. You will have to re-typecast it to a float or an integer when you need it. So in this case, I'm rounding this out. That way we do not have a float. But for the sake of not making my fat cat even fatter, we are just going to do this. Okay, so make Snoopy happy because he loves his dad. So we're going to come in here. And in theory, if we did this right, I'm going to turn guest mode on. Hey, it triggered, which is good. And now what we can come down here and see is our traces. We can see that happened. And just for a little bit, let me pull this up here. I really hate that for you, stupid app. Close. Cat feeder. So if everyone can see it, there's my cats currently being fed, thanks to you all.
I knew you would have a camera on these cats.
Yes. Yes. So unfortunately, this cat feeder does not support like RTSP. I think that's, so the one that was raised his head was Snoop and the other one's Trudeau.
Is it like a spouse that's holding it? Oh, okay. First thing there. Sorry.
What?
Sorry, I just saw the thing. I was like, is someone else crazy enough?
Yes. My girlfriend is at my house holding up the phone instead of just, sharing it. Yeah, so the one standing up, that's Madame Trudeau. She's my sweet baby princess. The other one's just the fat Snoop. So there's that. Thank you for making Snoopy happy. He thanks you. So we had that. So that was building out an automation there. And then we cover a little bit of Jenga templating too. Aaron, MDNS does not work for like adding an integration. It's only for like ESP home there, to my knowledge. But so we have that now, and let's go back over here. Oh yeah, coming into Jenga templating. Has anyone actually used Jenga templating? It's actually a surprising amount. It really annoyed me the first time I got into it. And the parts that still annoy me is when you actually want to get your lines correct. So whether or not like, oh, you don't want it to have white space in the beginning. There's an excellent example. Oh, Ansible. That makes sense.
Django, the Python web framework.
really tells you what technologies I should learn. um, yeah, but so it also excites me. So like we're all geeks and nerds here. So like this is just a direct translation from our jobs at the end of the day. And for me, I get to have so much freaking fun. And this was actually something I really got to bond with a lot of my coworkers about. And I was talking about my Brazilian buddy, like I still chat with him every couple of weeks and we talk about home assistant and stuff. And we also were able to get a couple other coworkers and had a boss that's like, oh yeah, he's going to go through and replace all of his blinds in his house with smart wings. It's like, oh, that's really cool. You can get custom blinds that are cheaper than Lutron. And they'll even do thread or Z-Wave. You can pick how you want them. It's like this is freaking awesome. Get them down to like a 16th of an inch in there. But specific with Jenga there, they have their own extensions. So, for example, coming out on their states, and for the sake of time, I'm just going to show their default developer tools here. So we're not going to go custom develop anything. I'm still playing with loops myself here. It's like, oh, okay. So they're pulling temperature from a variable here, pulling it down, the simple if statement, bringing it down as a timestamp, blah, 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 so on and so forth. The pirate weather is rainy. Is it Dark Sky? There's someone that made a drop-in replacement API called Pirate Weather. It's free. You should totally check it out. It's amazing. And come on, Zoom. Don't do this to me now. Anyways, so if you're going to come to this from scratch, I'm sorry we're running over here. This is how I would do it. Get a Raspberry Pi or a NUC, do it on SSD. Do not experience an SD card failure like Brian has or like I will in the future. Get a Conb 3 adapter. I run a Conb 2 right now, or get this SLZB. This one is actually made by a Ukrainian company. I learned about it from a British YouTuber called the Home Automation Guy. It's PoE powered. So super cool if you have like Ethernet in your house, because ideally you want your radio to be centrally located, and get yourself a Zeus 800 radio. That Ukrainian one, I don't know if it's multi-protocol or if you need like one for Thread and one for Zigbee. Thread is a later adventure. Some of the Google devices actually support them, and you have border routers, so they all just kind of connect up together. Add-ons, just your bare minimum. You need an MQTT server, which you can actually get away for a while unless you natively go to Zigbee to MQTT. This is the de facto standard that you should be using. And this is why I recommend a default supervised. Hey, my house told me someone's home because I need to turn off that switch from earlier. Go up, go us. But Zigbee to MQTT support is like 36 or 3,800 devices as of Sunday. So ZHA stands for, I forget now, but it is the default Zigbee one inside of Home Assistant. The only thing I found it supports better is the old SmartThings plugs. That's literally it. Otherwise, I would never use it. Z-Wave JS UI, fully customizable Z-Wave interface. You can send down your configuration commands and we can take a look through these. Your VS Code server, because surprisingly, you're editing your configuration.yaml every day for like the first month you set up Home Assistant. After that, you touch it like once a month. ESP.
Why is that in version control?
Mine is, but
So then you just have something push that out, right? Have some continuous deployment instead of.
there actually is native add-ons for that. But my thing is, and I learned this the hard way, Home Assistant does not boot into safe mode if you bugger it up. It says screw you and it does not boot. And with supervised installs, because everything is containerized, unless you were smart and enabled key-based access, you're just like SOL. And then when you plug in the SD card to your computer to fix it, it buggers up the install even more. And I ended up having to restore about a week old backup at that point. That was really fun. I really screwed up that time.
Guest house to death.
Yeah, I mean, probably for the best, to be honest. Yes. Yeah. Aaron commented ZHA Zigbee home automation. Thank you. I could not remember. And Zigbee Lightlink, which I'm not familiar with. Terminal, you're always going to be in it. And like I'm saying, on supervised install, you get all these add-ons that you can do. You can run them all independently if you're just using the native like Docker container. There's something just beautiful about it all being built in. And also for me, this is literally powering my entire house. It's powering security elements. It's powering life and safety. I want it to be on dedicated hardware. I don't want it to be on some janky hardware I bought from eBay personally. That's just my opinion. Node-RED, we were talking about earlier, ESP Home, really cool. In there, ESP Home projects, this is the awesome part for me. So there's ESP Presence. So, and these little boards, if you buy them from Alibaba, they're like $5 a pop. Otherwise, it's like $20 for 3 on Amazon. So really not that much more expensive. But you can use Bluetooth radio control. So like a lot of us wear smartwatches or have our phone on us all the time. So depending upon your Bluetooth distance and the decibel reading from it, you can actually determine where in your house you are. So utilizing this in Node-RED or Home Assistant automations, you could say when your laundry's done, which is a very hard automation, believe it or not, it's way more complicated than you think. You can say, oh, notify me when the washer's done rather than yelling across the house. Just tell me when I'm in the room. Don't notify my spouse or something like that. Bluetooth proxies. I was talking about these Miaflora like moisture soil sensors. You have them outside, which is what, 30 foot. You can use these sensors. Just plug in a little power adapter. They bridge Wi-Fi to Bluetooth. You could even use a VPN across the world or across the country, and you could extend your house's Bluetooth network anywhere in the world and read a garden from your lake house or something like that if you have one. I don't. Wish I did. Be nice. WLED. Philips Hue is hell expensive. WLED is like $30. It's free, and all the instructions are online. You can do cloud LEDs. You can do your whole stairway for like $50 for a really nice setup, or you can spend like $130, $150 for a Philips Hue setup there and still have to buy diffuser strips at that point. Voice assistants we were talking about earlier, you can do media players. Spotify kind of works in Home Assistant. You can run your Plex media from it. You can use local media, probably use Kodi or XMBC. I think those are relatively the same now. A couple ideas. I talked about replacing your 2U sensors. I used to have a bed sensor here that worked. My ESP board has said, I hate you, and I have not figured out how to fix it yet. We were talking about demo earlier. That did happen. Just want that to be known. Smart home resources, and we can do questions and maybe a little bit demo here. Smart home solver. I really should have made this text box bigger. This guy's fantastic. Talks about, he comes out with like 1 or 2 videos a year talking about his automations. His most recent one was his favorite automations. Can you make them without a hub? It was like 15 out of 17 he could in there. Smart Home Junkie. This guy's based out of the Netherlands. Absolute master of templating. My battery automation has come from him. It's great. Everything smart home. We didn't even talk about it, but all right, you're good. He makes a lot of hardware for the community. He made the everything present sensor here, and it's an ESP32 board with a PR, infrared, motion sensor there. It's got a temperature, humidity sensor, millimeter wave, so it's radar on there, so you can detect if the humans in the room. Tons of millimeter wave sensors out there now. This tech enthusiast here, software engineer, using Node-RED and ChatGPT. He integrated his bot K with Telegram into his house, and it's phenomenal in there, like absolutely beautiful. And if you'd like to connect with me at this point, and this is the main part of the talk because I know we're over. Any questions at this point? Really?
So that's kind of one of the classic ones is of the automations you've created, what's the one you either use the most or the most happy about?
So I'm going to answer that differently before I get to your question. I started out because I wanted my lights to turn on and off automatically. Oh my God, is that so much harder than you would think? Like, it is ridiculously hard to have motion control lights. One of my favorite automations, and I stole it from Smart Home Solver here, and I'll show it here, but my garage lights, this is an absurd amount of code to make my lights in my garage turn on. So when the garage door opens, when I open the door from the kitchen to the garage, or the garage motion turns on and Dumbhouse is off, then triggered by any, we have to start a timer on the garage door service, turn on the garage lights, delay for 3 seconds. And this delay is because I have a Matter smart plug because my garage lights draw 7 amps of power.
What?
They're on LEDs, believe it or not. I have 90,000 lumens in my garage, Michael.
I think you maybe need some lighting zones for your
Put your sunglasses on?
So
This is some Christmas vacation level brightness.
yeah, no, it is literally National Lampoons in my garage. It is fantastic.
Actually, brighter than me.
It is. My neighbors have not complained, surprisingly, but I don't. Brandon, maybe Brandon has a picture because I don't immediately have one. But
I mean,
7 8.
7.3, I believe. Here, if you would actually like to see it, we can.
no, I have glasses on, they'll burn my retinas out.
No, not like that.
TV's not that.
So how are mosquitoes?
Not an issue.
They die.
Integrations, ZHA here. So this is ridiculously stupid.
Wesley, that automation gets a whole lot simpler when you go to microwave sensors.
Millimeter wave there is a pain in the ass when you have ceiling fans. So yes, that's a lot of power for a garage light. Right there. And when you actually look at the summation here, like this is historical kilowatt hours.
Do you have a breakout for that in the power dashboard yet?
I do. So here, we'll actually go to my birthday here because you can just see where they were on all damn day. And then
How much a month does this, lighting your garage cost?
we're not going to talk about that, but we can calculate it.
Oh, you did all the Christmas gardens too.
So this down here is the server rack base load. That is the hot tub. Yeah.
Separate rooms.
Oh, you don't have a meter monitor yet?
No, I don't have the breaker space for it, and I haven't put in tandems. It's on the to-do list, but I've got more pressing priorities in life.
I've got the AOTech current transformer one. And so I just have the current transformer leads coming out through a gland.
Yeah, for most of them though, they need a phase reference, which requires you to. Well, so I actually learned in most code jurisdictions you don't need. So, depending on your breaker, you can double tap if the break, like so, Square D home lines will let you, but you can also tap off with like a Wago or a wire nut through a jumper there.
Yeah, the monitor I bought just came with a plain old NEMA, EO typical plug.
I don't have that on my panel, and it's
So I just
outside.
installed a receptacle right next to the panel.
Yeah, I don't have room.
Oh, your actual full.
Yes, besides the spot I need for the hot tub because it's on an extension cord right now. 120 volts. It's on 12 gauge. It's perfectly fine.
Sounds like a sub panel in your future.
That's expensive. So anyways, there's that. But so the garage automation is one of my favorites there. And this delay actually waits to see like, hey, is the garage door opening or anything before it turns on the other half. So I can only use 3 amps of power instead of, or 3.5 instead of 7 amps of power when the garage door is open because the lights are open the door. I don't care if they're on or not. But basically, so if the garage door is open, the lights will never turn off in there. And then if the garage door is closed, whenever it detects motion, it resets the timer for every 5 minutes. So that's probably been my favorite one. The cat feeder is really cool. Whenever the house detects I'm not there, it will ensure the cats are automatically fed for me. And some just like life ones right now. And you can see this horrible picture of me and my cats where Madam is hanging on to dear life. But I've set up this one right here to hopefully remind me to refill the cat feeder. So when it crosses 150, it's probably going to change that calibration to 200. But it will create a to-do list item. Then there's a helper automation. Whenever a to-do list item is created, send me a notification. And then it also pops up here. Hey, you should go refill the freaking cat feeder, Wesley. But
I just had ordered a cat food online.
because my mother is a coupon queen and I refuse to pay normal subscription prices. I have literally had PetSmart deliver 100 pounds of cat litter for $25. Yeah, I will coupon the hell out of this. But one of the other things, and we were talking about weather and stuff earlier, 80 to 85% of the data you see on this dashboard is actually coming from my backyard. I have so many automations, so I get notifications whenever there's lightning. That lightning sensor is special. But I know how much it rains. I know the wind. I got wind gust notifications. I can see when it is, and you can see, oh my God, it's way too hot where the server is. What the temperature are for my raised bed outside. Ironically, we can see it won't hold soil moisture when it rains for too long. But just keying off of automations for everything at this point. Any more questions? It's 8:40 right now.
What's that exclamation point by raining question mean? Sorry, raining crescent.
I have no idea, and I've yet to figure it out. So there's that.
So what's
Any-
in the backend servers tab?
A whole lot of useless information that I probably should eventually get rid of. Eventually I'm going to bring it out to InfluxDB, but I just haven't really done that yet.
If you had to guess roughly, like how many locally controlled devices versus cloud controlled devices would you have?
We can
Would you say
actually
50,
see
25,
that.
75?
So I don't actually use that one. Google Calendar, that one's not actually used. Hacks really isn't cloud. Home Connect Alt, a dishwasher of all things. I don't use that one. 2. I have 7 cloud integrations that I actually use. Well, actually, the Sun you can figure out without the cloud there.
Everything else is local.
Yeah. I used to have a lot more. And like waste management, I could go in here and I could set up a calendar, but like I was talking about, they changed my trash schedule all the freaking time. And it's really convenient because my neighbor and I share a trash can, and Home Assistant just texts her and said, hey, take your trash out. Because I got tired of texting her. Yeah. But yeah, so that's our talk for the night on here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here.